It's time for the movie raid, and tonight's victim is actor and sound engineer Alex VIncent, who's played in all the Child Play films. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
You're a sound engineer. What's going on with that?
Well, yeah, I went to school several years back at Full Sail, a school in Orlando, Florida. I got a recording arts degree there. I mean, I've always been a big music fan. I've always been appreciative of the audio aspect of production in general. So I did get a degree there, and it proved to be kind of like a $48,000 piece of paper that couldn't get me a job, like most people who graduate from that school go through. Nothing against the school, it's just a lot of people graduating with that same degree every month. So it kind of sat on a shelf for a few years, but I recently opened up a recording studio in Clearwater, Florida, started something on my own, got some of the newest stuff out there and some great microphones, and it's a really beautiful space, and I opened up a production company mostly focusing on audio, professional audio for music and film, but I can also do some video editing, photography and such, kind of an overall production studio. And that's just what I've been up to over the past 5 months. I've been building the place and just kind of getting the word out now, and finally getting some recordings going on in there. So yeah, things are moving forward with that.
Yeah, you also still act, but do you use acting as a side thing to put money into your company?
Well, I mean, the company's new. I haven't acted in any projects since I got this going. With acting for me, I auditioned from the age of like 5 till 13 in New York City, traveling from New Jersey. After school, I would go in the car and be driven into New York City for an audition. And if I wasn't in school, I was memorizing lines and rehearsing for auditions. And that was most of my childhood. So by the time I was 13, I just kind of got sick of doing that. It wasn't as fun as it was when I started. It wasn't as fun for me. It wasn't as fun for my mother, who was driving me and sitting in traffic going into New York City 3 times a week, 4 times a week. So I just stopped. I just stopped auditioning. And I took a long time just kind of not being in that business at all. And then I gradually pulled myself back into it kind of in a different route. I mean, I do a lot of horror conventions where I go out and sign autographs and meet fans, and I've gotten to travel all over and do these shows with other great horror celebrities. And that's been really cool for me, and it's opened up a couple doors to some independent projects, and something that I've been doing my whole life, which is writing, and I've written several screenplays, and I had the opportunity to make one of them into a film last year, and I have a couple others that are moving forward. And the exposure that I've gotten through the conventions has given me an opportunity to promote that and bring that to fans of the genre that are kind of interested in what I've been up to. So that's been good. Plus the resurgence of Curse of Chucky, and the series over the past couple of years, since we filmed it in 2012, it came out last year. They gave me a really cool kind of cameo at the end of it. I mean, that gave a little bit of a boost to not only my conventions, but my relevance to the series after all these years, because, it went kind of a different direction for a while. And now it's coming back full circle into, suspenseful horror concept that it was from the start. So I'm happy to be part of that, and there might be more of that to come. So, things are continuing to move forward for me in both this new venture with the studio that I'm working on, and different acting and writing projects that have come my way.
As you go into other projects, even as acting, you can still show off your new technology from your company at the same time, even if it's not really affiliated with you in general, like it's a whole new project. Well,
this film that we made called House Guest that we made last year, they hired me as a writer. I wrote the screenplay for these guys that were producing it locally. They had a concept, and I wrote a screenplay for them. And then that led to asking me to co-star in the film. So I did that. And then that led to them asking me to mix and score the entire project. So then I did that, which became, a big part of it. Between the writing and the scoring, I'm really proud of the work that I did, and that the final project. The acting as well. I mean, it came out pretty good, so I was happy with it. For the limited budget that we had, we actually made a pretty good film. But being behind the scenes and crafting the audio of the entire film was really rewarding for me, and it led me to want to do more and more of that work.
Has it been kind of a little bit of a therapeutic experience for you now that you're kind of easing back into this?
I mean, I suppose so. I don't know if about a therapeutic experience. I mean, for me, first of all, the process of putting together any creative project is a relaxing thing to do. It's what I enjoy doing. So sitting in front of Pro Tools for a couple hours and working myself in front of a camera again might be therapy of a different form. There was some stresses involved with that. I mean, it was a pretty demanding role that I wrote, really with no intention of me being the one to play it until they convinced me after the fact. But it was fun. It was a challenge, and I think it paid off pretty good. I mean, we took it to a couple of film festivals. I was given the Best Actor award at one of them, which they might have just been kissing my ass because of the child's play thing. I don't know, but I'll take it.
Speaking of challenges, what do you think are the challenges as far as acting goes? What do you think are the most challenges to overcome? I know there's a lot of challenges involved, but what do you think the ones that should be overcome?
Well, I had a good acting coach when I was young. I didn't go through any real formal training, but I had a good acting coach that worked with me a lot with both the child's play films and with other stuff when I was a kid, other projects, and just how to approach auditions, how to punch things like that. And to me, the most valuable stuff that I took from that was, not that I would consider myself a method actor by any means, but I think that the challenge is to really put yourself into a place in your mind where you convince yourself that you are naturally acting the way that you would in the given situation. You have to make it your own in the sense of really identifying with the moment. And for me, coming back to acting and trying that again, I recalled some of those thoughts and some of those things that I've been taught when I was younger. And they actually really paid off for me because I was able to put myself in that moment. And I found myself in a little bit of a more natural, comfortable space, even with all the nerves and anticipation leading up to that moment. By the time I got there, I had put myself mentally in a place that I could really envision myself living through what I was acting, and it just made it a lot easier for me. So I don't know if that's advice that someone can take or just practice, but that's what works for me.
Have you ever tried to put your own personal emotion into the character, or do you separate yourself from that and try to work with something with the character itself?
Well, in this recent film, I had a scene at the end where I am tied up to my sister back to back in ceramic wrap, and a killer who has come into my house and stomped one of my friends to death, slit another one's throat, a killer is trying to convince his son to be like him and plunge this 8-inch blade right into my stomach. So for me to put myself in that position, to act accordingly and act the way that I wrote it and the way that I felt someone would react in that situation, I have to put some of my own emotion into it. I have to put myself in that place. I have to build a fear within myself for an actor that honestly couldn't be the sweetest guy, and couldn't be a sweeter guy in the world than what he actually is in real life. But, that's the part of acting. That's part of the challenge of it, and that's part of the fun of it. It's putting yourself mentally into circumstances that, either for good or bad, you're not really in your life.
Yeah, it can be very challenging, especially in horror, because it could be very easy now to just scream or act like you're hurt, but it's all about emotion. How can you really do this and how really make it sell, per se?
Yeah, well, for some personal insight, on that topic, I was in that scene. I was tied back to my sister, the actress playing my sister, who did a great job, and to put yourself into a place where you can relate to that, I have a sister. So I was back to back. I had the the benefit, the advantage of actually picturing my sister tied up behind me. So it's a lot easier to, portray emotions that you would be feeling if you were really in that situation.
All depends between the direction you're going to. This is separating yourself from as the writer or as the director. It can be a little distracting at times too.
Yeah, this is how I can identify with method acting. I can't completely, if I were to be cast into Child's Play 7 by chance, I wouldn't spend 3 months pretending to be Andy Barclay in my daily life.
Yeah.
But I think there's some aspects of method acting that can be drawn from as an actor to help them get through a scene and relate to that role.
Do you feel that character that you played as from that film is pretty much done with, or do you think it could have been done just a little bit more or pulled through another sequel if possible?
Oh, I think anything's possible. We're talking about a doll that has a human soul inside of it that wants to kill people. So anything is possible in the Child's Play world. If you saw how the last one ended,
oh yeah,
it's left pretty open-ended to where we could go I'm not being coy, and I'm not hiding information that I actually know. I really don't know what's going to happen next with the series. But I have my hopes, and I have my own wishes for the direction that it might go. But we'll see.
Yeah, franchises like that can either blow up in your face or just actually become even better than they ever were. Because, back in the old days, horror films like that had some negativity, and at the time there was like a fresh look because if let's say, in your case, if someone wants to kill a child, that's like the big no-no, even for horror at the time.
Yeah.
And they get protesters, but now it's like it's a more dramatic thing, and it gets the audience pumped up, and it's like, oh my god, is he going to escape from it? That's what you want right there.
Well, one thing that I like to say about my role as Andy in the Child's Play films in the 80s, especially the original two, I was one of the last sympathetic child actors in a horror film. Nowadays, usually the kid is suspect, the kid is creepy, we're unsure of his guilt the entire time. Sometimes the kid is ultimate all along, but they usually go for the creep factor on child actors in horror films now, and I don't think you really care as much. I can say confidently that I don't think many people watch Child's Play and rooted for Andy to die,
Yeah.
But nowadays, the shock factor of killing the kid in the first scene is almost what people are accustomed to. So
things have dramatically changed, but at the same time have dramatically decreased as far as thrills go. It's just getting it out there and trying to just make cash off of it and have all these sex scenes in there. Well, the sex scene thing has been going on forever, but they've got to make it like softcore porn rather than a horror.
Yeah.
And it just drives you away from the story itself. And we're going back to as far as the killing a kid or bending the rules, so to speak. They finally kind of broke the barrier now, even though it could be banned in 100 countries.
Yeah, you can't argue the fact that shock sells. It does, but I think the stuff that has longevity, the Child's Play concept has been in people's minds for 26 years now, and I think some of these shock horror films might stay with people for a little bit, but it's not really relatable. I think that the reason why people could relate to Child's Play, despite the fact that it's an impossible situation. It's supernatural in the sense that it just couldn't happen. But the reason why people could still relate to it is because it's a fear that they had before they even heard of this film. Everybody has laid in bed at night and seen a doll in their house and pictured, maybe this thing is alive and staring at me. People have that, I don't want to say fear, but they have that thought in their heads naturally. So when you get a story or a concept that taps into something that people have already thought, it's way more relatable. It's like a comedian telling a joke that you've already thought of. Of course, you're going to relate, and you're going to laugh, and you're going to remember it for your entire life. So I think that's why the Child's Play franchise has lasted as long as it has.
But that's what makes the horror aspect. If you do something like that, the same thing what they did with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, same thing with what they did with Wes Craven's characterization with Freddy Krueger. If you do it just right as far as horror and still scare people with that without actually making it, I guess, wrong type feeling, make it memorable forever.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I'm so fortunate and grateful to the fact that I was in a horror film of all genres. First of all, we have conventions where fans all gather all across the country. As of now, other genres of film don't quite have the same kind of thing, aside from, comic books and comic conventions in general. But these horror conventions, the reason why these films create such an intense following is because fear is a reaction that sticks with you. It's a visceral reaction. So if you're afraid of something, that's something that stays with you forever. It leads into people's dreams. It's the stuff of nightmares. It's things that stay with you. And luckily, I was involved in something that gave people a lot of fears. Even though, people still to this day say, well, why didn't you just kick the doll across the room? It's only 2.5 feet tall. You were still scared when you saw it. I don't care what you got to say.
Yeah.
That's a huge factor of my acting career that I'm grateful for. That of all the films that I could have been in that were popular, it was a horror film because the fans are great and they're so supportive and they continue to be. And the circle of horror movie celebrities or whatever, actors in family of friends that get together in different states and different cities and different countries even, and get to meet fans together. And it's really an interesting community of people that are really grateful for the Child's Play franchise as well as the entire genre of horror. And I'm really lucky to be a part of it. Well, anyways, my stuff that I could promote for what I got going on. I mean, I have this recording studio that I just opened up in Clearwater. It's a beautiful space. The website is, the name of the company is AV Productions, my initials, and audio video, but AV Productions. And the website's avproductionsonline.com, and you can go and get all info on that. And then I also have my own website, which is Alex VIncent Online, that has all my convention appearances, Chucky merchandise that I could sign, and all kinds of cool stuff. Some of my writing, some of my audio mixes, and stuff on SoundCloud, and all kinds of cool stuff.
Do you think the creativity has either lacked of creativity or narrowed creativity even in horror genre or the industry itself?
Do I think that creativity has narrowed? I don't know. I mean, the further advanced we get as a people, the more thoughts will become repetitious. And that doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. You know, people often tell me that are writing screenplays, and they say, I'm writing this script, and then someone will say, oh, they made a movie that was just like that. Well, you know, boy meets girl, and boy falls in love, and girl leaves, and boy's brokenhearted, and boy gets the girl back. That's been done a million times successfully, as often as possible. It doesn't matter if your story is not original or not the first time it's been told, but it's how you tell it. You know, and I think that opens up that gap of creativity. You know, it doesn't narrow it by the fact that things have been repeated, because there's new ways of telling stories all the time. Is that saying that some of the things that come out aren't done repetitiously? Sometimes, but you know, with every year that passes, there's more than a handful of great new films. There's a lot of films that aren't getting as big of a release as others that are very worthy of people's attention. I think people will continue, and it's not just film, music, poetry is a bit of a dying art, but it's something that I've published several poetry books, and people that are in that community are still pushing out great new content. I mean, I think creativity is limitless, so I don't think that it's narrowed down necessarily. I think actually the fact that technology has improved to the fact where more and more people can put their creative ideas in, a digital format that it can be released socially online and social media to millions of people instantly. I mean, creativity has more opportunity than it ever has had before. So, it's just a matter of how it's utilized. You get the good and you get the bad all the time. So I think those with creative ideas should just continue to keep pushing forward, and we'll get more and more good entertainment for everybody. I'm a big fan of creativity in general. I mean, I opened up this production studio because I wanted to work with local people that are putting out something good and something special. I know when a film strikes me, when a note strikes me, and that's always been a good feeling to me. And creative people can relate to that. So I think the only advice I can give you is don't be lazy, keep pushing forward, and if you want your idea to become a reality and you want people to see what you're thinking, you can make it happen. And it's easier now than ever to do that. Just, you got to put the work in, and you got to be diligent, and you got to be busy, and you got to work hard, and you got to execute what it is you want to do, and it can happen.
That's actor and sound engineer Alex VIncent.